G'day, how we doing? Feeling good? Good. I'm going to get you guys to do some stuff during my talk with me. Is that all right?
Yes.
Yeah, sick. All right. The first thing we're going to do is I want everyone to give me your quietest laugh on the count of 3. Do you reckon we can do that? All right, ready? Like 1, 2, 3. Sick. We even got some hand movements down in the front. This is good stuff, guys. Feeling good. All right, next, I want you to give me your loudest, silliest laugh. I want everyone next to you to be embarrassed to be next to you, all right? I'm looking at the mums specifically for this one. Can we do that? All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Oh my God, thank you, stop it. Thank you so much, guys. And I just want to do one final thing, if that's okay. We're good? So I want this side of the room. On the count of 3, don't do it yet. I want you to, with your plastic chair, just do that, okay? Good? This side of the room, on the count of 3, I want you to just go on your plastic chair. Can you do that? All right, ready? 1, 2, 3, go. See, if you hear that, you've got rats. It can be informative and funny. Thank you so much. So before I really get into it, now that I've gotten you all warmed up to be on a bit of a sillier side, I just wanted to take you guys through some of my fears, some of my biggest fears at the minute. And one of those main fears is a climate change. Anyone else worried about climate change? Yeah, we're pretty close to Castlemaine. But I'm really worried about climate change, and not just because of how it's going to affect us or what it might do to humanity one day, or even my fears about the amount of people dying of climate change. I'm mainly worried about climate change because there's flowers blooming in the Arctic and the North Pole, which is crazy, right, to think about that. Flowers blooming in the Arctic and the North Pole. Because that means that one day we might have an epidemic of polar bears who have hay fever, who can't hold tissues. Nah, think about it. Imagine being the first polar bear to ever get hay fever. How that conversation would go. Like, you'd be walking down the road, living your little polar bear life, all of a sudden you see a bunch of flowers, and you're like, wow, this must be what flowers are. You stop to smell the roses, and then all of a sudden air hates you. You bring this information back to the polar bear community, and you're like, guys, the flowers, they're trying to kill me. The polar bears are like, you're clearly insane. They put you in a polar bear asylum. Years and years and years go by, then the son of a much richer, more respected polar bear is walking around that same road, sees the same flowers, sniffs those flowers, gets hay fever, brings them back to the polar bear community, goes, guys, the flowers are trying to kill me. He's hailed as a hero, made king of the small polar bear colony. The other polar bear still sitting in the polar bear asylum going, well, this wouldn't have happened if I wasn't a woman. Deep stuff. Past the front. Now that is a very silly joke, I'm aware. But what I wanted to talk to you today is about how I got to that joke, which just sounds very ridiculous on the surface, and it is. Because as said before, when I was younger, I developed quite all of a sudden a really strong fear of death. Because I didn't have a religious belief, and I haven't been able to find one that I liked and suited me personally, or any other types of belief, even unreligious, simply spiritual. In my mind and in my heart, I truly believed, and still do, that when I die, there will be nothing. But it was a really difficult thing to believe, because that also made me incredibly anxious, because it's something that I cannot comprehend, because to comprehend is to exist. And I was really upset about this, as I'm sure you can imagine, and it caused a great deal of anxiety. But I also felt like I couldn't talk to my friends or family about this because everyone seemed to have this figured out. That either found a religion or they seemed really chill with the idea that nothing would happen and were having a sick time at schoolies. All right. And I tried many things. I tried counselling, and I even tried going to the doctor. I went into a doctor and I said, hey, I'm having a really hard time with my anxiety. Like, I don't know what to do about it. And the doctor looked at me and he was like, hey, I think that you've just got to learn to trust your gut. Can you do that for me, yeah? Can you just learn to trust your gut? And I was like, yeah, sure, doc, okay, fine. And then 5 minutes later, he diagnosed me with IBS. Which is rude. But he might have had a little bit of a point. I'll give him that. I did though, for years during my teen years, I drank more than any teenager should, and I slept less than any teenager should, and I had a really difficult time doing anything without the back of my brain going, one day you won't even be able to comprehend doing this, and everyone that you love and know won't be able to comprehend doing this. And it really stressed me out. That is until one fateful night. I had a really bad panic attack and I was staying up looking at random YouTube. And I came across a video of the Great British Bake Off, a comedy special. And for those of you who don't know what that is, the Great British Bake Off is essentially a bunch of people in a tent baking very average cakes. That's also the reason I agreed to do this talk. I'm really hoping they'll book me. But it caught my attention in a way that nothing had really caught my attention for a very long time, because it was just so silly. It was a whole bunch of people quite happy to exist, having a brilliant time baking cakes in a tent for people who quite obviously didn't really like the cake, and then we were all watching it and finding it hilarious, and it was just a good time. And there was nothing profound about this. It was just a really fun, silly time. And I couldn't get it out of my head. And I started thinking, well, like, if I could feel that happy watching people make cake, like, maybe I can use that to, like, help with this anxiety that I'm feeling right now. So I kept thinking about it and I started writing. And this was about the same time that I started doing stand-up. So I was about 14 at this time. And I tried really, really hard to write about the things that made me anxious, like polar bears and climate change. And whether or not when polar bears do get hay fever, because I googled it, they can. Whether they have to give the hay fever medication as a normal pill or use a really big block of cheese like they do for dogs. But I really tried and I really worked, and it was incredible. Because when I started doing my stand-up, I started talking about the things that made me anxious, and people were laughing and having a good time. And it was amazing, and I thought about it, and I was like, well, why is that? Like, now at 20, why am I looking back at that and going, why was that cool? And I think part of it is to do with the fact that when you're incredibly anxious about something, you can't be in the moment. You are constantly back there with the thing that made you anxious. But when you're doing stand-up comedy, you can't be anywhere else. There's nowhere to hide. Not for the audience, and definitely not for the person standing up here. And for a joke to work, you guys have to be on board just as much as I'm on board, which means none of us can be anxious. We all have to trust each other a lot. And that's a really difficult thing to do. But when you do it right, it is the most cathartic thing to do. And so what I want to leave you with is not to become a stand-up comedian, because I want to get paid. And not to trivialise the things that make you anxious, or to take your tragedies or your traumas and to make fun of them, or to make fun of anyone else's, but in your own practice and your own life, to take the lens of comedy and write just for yourself or just for your loved ones about those things, and try to find the fun in the fear. Because once you were able to do that, it becomes a lot easier to move into the spaces that were so foreboding at the beginning. Thank you very much.